Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to lecture of the economics of environment and natural resources. Our today's topic for this lecture is the agriculture and the environment. In this lecture, we will discuss in detail how the human activities have affected the agriculture sector, how the environmental pollution, how the environmental degradation are linked to the agriculture sector. What is the effect of the environmental degradation? What is the effect of the environmental pollution? What is the effect of the human activities, which may be industrial and non-industrial activities on the agriculture sector, is the topic of this lecture. We know that the human activities has adversely affected the vegetation and the land around the world. We see in the many areas where once there were very dense forests, now those areas are bare land. We see many fertile lands, many fertile plains where agriculture was on its peak at one time. Now they are deserts. We see grassy lands as deserts. We see the fall in the agricultural production. We see fall in the fertility of the land, and all this is due to the irresponsible behavior of the human beings. The human beings, they tried through the use of different chemicals, different pesticides, insecticides to cure the diseases. The human activities also increase the use of the different chemicals in form of the fertilizers, which affect the agriculture adversely. So, dear students, this lecture is relevant to the impact of the interrelationship between the environment and agriculture, and the impact of the human activities on agriculture. Agriculture and the environment. Dear students, this is a very important topic, the interrelationship between the agriculture and the environment. Let me quote here the quotation of a well-known classical economist J.S. Mill. In words of J.S. Mill, in the case of cultivated land, a man is not entitled to think that all this is given to him to use and abuse and deal with it as if it concerned nobody but himself. The well-known economist J.S. Mill say that if a person cultivates land, he should not think that he can use and abuse this land according to his own will, and he should not take it as nobody's property. It is actually the giant property. It is a part of the global environment. So a man should not think that the land which he cultivates, he can use and abuse this land. In the whole world, we see that the land and vegetation has been affected more by human activities than nature. We see that the densely populated forests, they are now deserts. We see the densely populated forests today as bare lands. We see many fertile grasslands as deserts today. We see many fertile lands as bare land today. And all this is due to the irresponsible activities of the human beings. The human activities, the human behavior is affecting the land and the forest adversely. In 19th century, the British government introduced corn laws to ensure the plenty of homegrown food at steady prices. These became increasingly protective, restricting import and causing prices to rise until 1846, when they were abolished. Court 1967. The British government introduced the corn laws in order to protect the domestic agriculture sector. They banned imports of the agro products, which caused increase in the prices of the agricultural goods. In 1973, the UK government joined the European community and became a part of the common agriculture policy adopted by the European community with the objectives as given below. The first objective of the CAP was to increase agriculture productivity by promoting technical progress. This means that one of the motto of the CAP was to increase the agriculture production to improve the agriculture productivity through the technological development. The second objective was ensuring the regional development of the agricultural production. Optimum utilization of all factors of production, in particular labor, was another objective. Moreover, another objective was to ensure a fair standard of living for agricultural community to stabilize the markets. This means that CAP was a multi-dimensional policy and it had not only a single objective, but it covered a variety of a number of the objectives. Similarly, one of the objectives of the CAP was to provide the certainty of supplies and to ensure supplies to consumer at a reasonable price. This means price control was another objective of the CAP. The British government declared agriculture development as their key national interest in its publication in 1973 and 1975. Almost similar policies were pursued by many rich countries like USA and Canada. Agriculture protective policies can be in form of import control, export subsidy for domestic products, income support for marginal farmers, and non-price, non-income measures. Protectionist policies, continuous expansion and intensification of the domestic agriculture has created a number of environmental problems across the globe. For example, due to the intensification and due to the protectionist policies and the expansion agriculture, some of the environmental problems which arose can be listed as we see in this slide. Pollution by nitrogenous fertilizers and pesticides. This is one of the important source of environmental pollution because we see that the pesticide and insecticide which are used in the agriculture sector, they contain the nitrogen. As we see that in many parts of the world, the land has a scarcity of the nitrogen. So in order to remove the scarcity of the nitrogen in the land, the fertilizer and pesticide containing the nitrogen are used. Similarly, the disposal of livestock waste, removal of the landscape features, the loss of wildlife and soil erosion are some of the examples. All these have been drawn in this figure we see, which have been taken from COLA 1994. We see that at a point P, the value of agricultural production is maximum, but poor performance in other sectors make it socially suboptimal. Here at this point P, we see that the productivity of agriculture is very high. It is at the peak. But what we see that with this growth, we see that the landscape are decreasing. We see that the wildlife are also not at a very good level, and rural employment is also which should be very high, is not seen very exemplary. So, at E, the combined value of all aspects of land utilization are maximized. At point E, we see that agriculture output is increasing, we see the wildlife is at a good position, and rural employment is also decreasing. It is, but it is better than the point P. We see that the landscape is also better than the level which is at point P. Modernization of agriculture leads to environmental degradation, as we see in this picture. So now let us discuss some of the effects of the nitrogen on some of the effects of the agriculture and the chemicals used in the agriculture, the pesticide and insecticide on the environmental degradation. Inorganic nitrate pollution. With the development of industrial sector related to agriculture, the age of the nitrogenous fertilizer started. Nitrogen, a necessary item for crops, is scarce in natural soil in most places, as I discussed in the previous slide, that many parts of the world, many parts even of our own country, we see the less nitrogen in the lands. The scarcity of nitrogen in the soil results in limits to agriculture production. It is an important part of the food for the plants. So, due to the scarcity of nitrogen, the agriculture production is being affected very worstly. Let me make a correction. It may enter the plant through many ways. The nitrogen enter the plant through many ways, through the plant and animal residues, and in the rain, including the and fertilizer as well. Introduction of latest varieties of grain through the experiment also lead to boom in the nitrogen fertilizer use. Huge investments were made in such chemical industries around the world. The release of nitrogen from soil is a slow process. When huge quantities of nitrogen fertilizer are in intensive farming, there is unnaturally high levels of nitrogen on the land for many decades to come. It flows out slowly into streams with rivers, lakes, seas, making the water polluted with high level of dissolved nitrogen. As I discussed, through the fertilizer, through the pesticides which we spray, if there is a rain or through the water, it is flown to the rivers, to the streams, to the lakes and seas, and it makes the water polluted, because the nitrogen is dissolved, which is creating problems for the marine life. It is harmful to health and creates serious drinking water pollution. High quantity of nitrogen in water leads to many life-taking diseases. Some ingredients of nitrogenous fertilizer lead to excessive growth of algae, which accumulate on the surface of water, which kills the fish, and many species around the world disappeared due to pollution. It is therefore recommended to take the following step to reduce the damage from nitrogen. Number 1. Regulation of nitrogen fertilizer used by various means such as direct control and permit system. No free use of nitrogen be allowed. Taxation to reduce the use of inorganic fertilizer by making them more expensive, and reduction in the agriculture subsidies, especially for grain, which will curb output and hence reduce demand for fertilizers. Another step could be change in the farming pattern, in particular a move from winter sown cereals where the ground will not remain empty over the winter. Avoidance of plowing up of the pastures would also help. Change in land use pattern in the favor of afforestation, a shift away from high nitrogen demanding crops and the nitrogen offset scheme, and similarly the treatment of polluted water or some steps to control the level of nitrogen. So, dear students, the second source of pollution from agriculture is the pesticide pollution. We know that every year a large number of the national disaster in the form of the rains, floods, these destroy our crops. Similarly, the pests and disease also destroy our crops on a huge area. Pesticides are one of the sources to control the pests and the diseases. A pesticide is, according to Holsack, a pesticide is defined as a chemical agent used to destroy or control pests. It is a treatment for the pests. It is a chemical which is used to kill the pests. The root word is the Latin word "cida," which means to kill. In order to protect crops from the pests and insects, pesticides are widely used around the world. Looking at the history of the pesticides, DDT was first introduced in 1930s and applied to non-food crops such as cotton and tobacco. After World War II, many pesticides were developed to increase the food production because the pests destroy crops. The efforts by human beings to increase the food through the introduction of more and more pesticide led to the development of the variety of insecticide, herbicide, or fungicides, which are widely used throughout the world. The extensive application of pesticide in modern agriculture led to a number of damage like contamination of groundwater, surface water, and seas. Because when we spray the pesticide on the crops and when it rains, the pesticide, the chemicals are washed away by the rainwater, and some of such type of water is absorbed by the ground, which is dissolved in the groundwater, making the groundwater contaminated. Similarly, it also lead to the polluted surface water, and the streams flow into the streams with polluted water flow into the seas, making it polluted. Some pesticides are highly persistent and their effect extends to species other than target population, and in this way they could affect the human health. A quantity gets washed up by rain, which eventually ends up in water supply and finally seas, coming to harm. In this way, it enters the food chain. The animals eat such plants on which we spray the pesticide, and the chemical enters a human body, creating numerous health problems. When the pesticides are sprayed on the plants, and if these are the food crops, when the human beings eat food, that food, these chemicals enter the human body. Similarly, when the pesticides are sprayed on the plants, if it is eaten by the animals, it enters their body, creating a number of the health problems. And if we look around us, today in our country, Pakistan, we see that the huge use of the pesticide and insecticide on the vegetables, on the fruits, and when we eat such type of the food, when we eat such type of the vegetables, these chemicals enter our body, creating numerous health problems for us. According to report in 1990, from contamination of seas, penguins in Antarctica are affected. Many species of the animals, large and small, birds and fish, fall victim. Dear students, the pesticide affect the microscopic life of soil on which much of its fertility depends. You know that there are many microorganisms in the land. When the chemical mixed water enter the land, it kills such type of the organisms, thereby reducing the fertility of land. Similarly, pesticide worsening effect had the outcome by drinking water exposure. A 10% increase in the rice pesticides use unfavorably altered a key medical disability index by 1% for rural residents of 65 and older. As this study was conducted in China by LA 2017, who said that due to the exposed water, there is a threat for the aged people. In monetary terms, it is equal to $2.13 and $0.64 million in medical and family care costs. The most widely used pesticides are insecticide, herbicide, and fungicide, while more rodenticides and botanicals are also used, according to Hosik 1964. The most effective policy can be ban the harmful substances. It is done in many countries, but the effects still prevail in the environment, because we know that today the environment is a global environment, not limited to a particular country. It is done in many countries, but the effects are still felt across the borders. And the policy can be higher rate of taxation to reduce the unnecessary use of pesticide. The pesticide should be very highly taxed so that its price may rise, and when it rise in the price of the pesticide, its use will fall. Animal waste and pollution. The intensification of meat, poultry, and dairy industries in the smaller countries of Europe led to increase of polluting emissions on their land. The emission of ammonia and methane from livestock has led to acid rain and greenhouse effect across the European countries. The pace of intensification accelerated during 1970s and 1960s, when animal waste is put on land. Some is absorbed by land and some washed away by surface water. The plant gets some minerals from the waste and the nitrate dissolved in the groundwater. The phosphates and sulfates are also mixed in the groundwater. The waste of different animals have different concentration of minerals, sulfates, and the phosphates. So the waste of different animals affect the land differently. But all these harm the environment and the human life. Soil erosion. Soil erosion is the oldest and probably the most persistent environmental problem associated with agriculture. North Africa, once a fertile and highly productive breadbasket of the Roman Empire, has lost much of its natural fertility. Some countries there are nowadays depend upon imports to feed their population. In the Middle East, once rich soils have been rendered useless because of the overuse. Due to relentless grain farming, topsoil in a good part of Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon was washed away many centuries ago. In India, between the 1950 and 1990, 175% increase in agriculture was achieved as a result of Green Revolution. The use of the deep plowing and the chemical fertilizer instead of much increased the rate of soil erosion rapidly. Overgrazing is another major cause of the soil erosion. The following remedies can be adopted to reduce the soil erosion: cost sharing practices, technical assistance, and if the government provides technical assistance to land farmers, then they will be able to reduce the rate of the soil erosion. A combined and cost sharing and technical assistance policy can also lead to the reduction of the soil erosion. So, this was something about the agriculture and environment. For dear students, for details, you can study the Conrad 2003 book, the resource economics, as well as the chapters from Nicola 1994, and a chapter from Titelberg 2012, a paper by the Horsek and Bediant, Horsek et al., 1964, and the book can be provided if you need it. So thank you very much.